survive your desk means like, doctors say, I don't know if you've heard this, but sitting is the new smoking. And that is kind of just the tip of the iceberg. Like, I mean, there's health stuff, that comes from sitting for too long. But the real issue is what you might call the grind, or what I call, like, a more specific way to say that is seated screen toil, which is, you're sitting at your screen for hours, you're trying to solve stressful problems, and there's like a half-hearted promise in your mind that you'll take care of yourself, like when it's done. But then at the end of the day, your brain is basically soup, and so you don't do whatever you thought you were going to do to take care of yourself. So surviving your desk is like finding workday habits that you can do during the day that are embeddable, so that things don't ruin your mind and body. But also, part of the reason why we don't do those habits is because we're afraid to sacrifice like momentum, professional momentum. So when we're stressed, though, self-care is the first thing that goes. And this cycle kind of reinforces itself, because the more like difficult we find things, the more sort of sick we get, the more difficult things seem, the more stressed we get, like we can't take care of it, and then it kind of spirals. So again, the idea is, like, this word embeddable, I think, is really important to think about with habits. And I'll talk about like some frameworks about that. Someone asked me, what do you think about standing desks? And I was like, do you use one? And they were like, well, I have it. And I was like, do you use it? And they were like, no. And I was like, then I'm against them for you, because it's not like a good, no thing is the thing. It's only what fits you. Talk a lot more about that in a minute. So basically, I have this, so self-science is this system of, it's an app plus coaching, and it basically helps you find the uniquely embeddable habits that are high impact and low effort in your life. And I have this framework that kind of evolved from using it, and it's called the DIE-RISE Habit Framework, DIE/RISE. And I'll share that with you now. But when we start a new habit, I find that we are always unconsciously asking ourselves, am I good enough to stick with this habit? So we think okay, oh, I should meditate or whatever. And if we start doing it, then we're like, ooh, this is good, or whatever, whatever, either it's good or I don't know if it's good, but am I good enough to stick with it? Like, do I have the like moral character to stick with it? But that is backwards, and that what we should be asking is this habit good enough to stick with me? And so how do you know if a habit is good enough to stick with you? Ultimately, you have to test it. There is no way of knowing for sure beforehand whether a habit will work. And I have looked at hundreds of habit tests at this point, both my own and from clients. You literally never know whether a habit will work, whether it's right for you, before trying it. But there is a little simple filter called DIE, DIE, which, I don't know, maybe I'm just morbid. I sort of like having a little bit of darkness and things. But oddly enough, DIE stands for doable, impactful, and enjoyable. So it's kind of a light thing, but it's a filter for deciding whether a habit like is worth even trying. So doable is kind of like obvious, but it's not, because people choose habits that are not doable. So it's weird, but a question you might ask is, can I start this habit? Can I initiate it when I want to do it, or when it's a good time to do it, within 30 seconds? That's a simple sort of test. Another question is, do I need equipment? Do I need to be in a specific place or a specific time? And so any of these things, if it's not really doable, it's not going to last. So it's like, I wouldn't even say it's worth trying. You should find a way to make it more doable. It also has to be immediately impactful. That's the I. You have to feel like you did something right after the habit. If you don't feel like you did something, you're not going to keep doing it. I've done lots of habits that were not immediately impactful. One I actually was just testing for 2 or 3 weeks. And it was like almost impactful, but not quite there. And so I dropped it. And I will maybe come back to it because I kind of love it. It's like a little mindfulness moment, let's say. It's a little game I play. But it wasn't impactful enough, so I dropped it for something that's more impactful. And then E is the enjoyable. You have to find some kind of sweetness in the sweat, if you will. And if it's not enjoyable, then it won't last. Because what all the research, like I read a lot of research on habits and self-control, which are like very closely related. And we don't stick to habits because they are like good for us in the long run. We really don't care about that. Our brains just they don't register. What we stick to are things that we find immediate pleasantness in. So my catchphrase is die habits, die hard. And if they're not die, then they're dead. And they have to be customized. They have to be very customized. The rise part is the how we do the experiments in self-science. So self-science is all about experiments. You have to do experiments with your habits, and the more structured you are with your experiments, the quicker you know whether a habit is going to fit and how to tweak it and stuff like that. So RISE is the framework for that. We're not going to really go into that, but it's rooting to your future self. That's the R. I is imagining the costs and benefits of the habit in the moment. S is scanning, where you actually test it, and then E is evolving. So that's the cycle of an experiment. Now, hello, Melissa. Good of you to join us. We got a small group today, but we're already rolling. So, but feel free to stop me and ask any questions. I love answering questions. So I'm just going to give you an example. Like, I'm not going to prescribe any habits to you today because that would be completely useless. But I'm going to tell you some habits that for me have been completely life-changing. To illustrate, I just want to illustrate why customization is so important. That you can't just look like on Instagram or whatever and like find a habit person who's like, do cold plunge or do morning meditation or whatever, right? It's just not useful. But what I found personally is that I do about 100 to 200 reps a day of light exercise. It's very easy for me to do. I can repeat it. I've done it for now a few years, and it's great for me. And also the exercises are customized. I change them and I, tailor them to what I need. Another one that I have is food, which is that I hate cooking, but I like to eat healthy. So what I do is I cook a ton of vegetables all at once, and then I just throw them in things throughout the week for my lunch, or if I'm at my co-working space like I am now, then I eat them for breakfast. And so I get my veggies in, right? But it's like very specific the way I do it. And because I also don't like salad. Salad doesn't feel good to me. So it's got to be cooked veggies, right? It's like very specific. But I fit these into my life. Oh, the other one, by the way, new habit that is total game changer for me is taking a 15 to 20 minute nap during the day, midday. And I did that today, and I've done it pretty much every day for the last few months.
Can you sleep in 15 minutes? You can turn your brain off?
Excellent question. No, well, sometimes, but what I do is I just think of it as completely letting go, and I lie down, turn off the lights or not. Today I slept in a room in the co-working space and there were lights on, but sometimes I have two great moments. One is like the almost falling asleep. Do you know when you almost fall asleep, but then you like catch, like you automatically don't fall asleep for some reason? You're like, oh shit, I almost had it, right? But then, so that happens, but that's actually very valuable. Hey, Rashid, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming. So that's very valuable. I find that if I do that 3 or 4 times, I feel refreshed. And then sometimes I actually do doze and, for like a minute or something, but it is enough for me to have energy to make it through the day. I don't drink coffee. I've started drinking a little tea, but I don't need the caffeine.
I feel like it's more of just like a meditative pause sometimes, even just
yeah. This is okay. So this is funny, right? Because if I got on a call with this guy a few weeks ago and he was like, oh, I was just doing my like 30-minute meditation or whatever. And I was like, all right, humble brag. But also like, that it seems like kind of like, oh, like that's cool and noble. But if you were like, oh, I was just napping for 20 minutes, it doesn't have the same like gravitas, but it's basically the same thing. Like if you look at someone meditating, I mean, you could lie down meditating, but My point is like, I've meditated I went 1 year meditating every day for 5 minutes. I went 1 year meditating every day for 15 minutes. Napping is better for me. Basically the same thing. Napping is clearly way better for me. So for what I need, what I want, you know? So here are some habits that, so here are some lies about habits that we, I think that are just really pervasive and hard to overcome. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Lie number one is what I call the virtue trap. So the virtue trap is basically the idea that good habits make you a good person, or that sticking to habits makes you a good person. And you might not think of it exactly this way, but this is everyone, like it's so pervasive. It's like, oh man, that guy's doing exercise every day. Like he must be like on his, like his life is like good, you know, he's like a good, I don't know, like he has you know, fortitude, moral fortitude in some way. And that is bullpucky. And the truth is that habits are tools. They are tools to make your life easier or more satisfying. And if they're not doing that, then they're not worth using as tools. But it's like, you know, hammers are also tools and they help you build shelves and they're great for that. But being good at using a hammer doesn't make you a good person. It just makes your life easier when you want to build shelves. Same thing with habits. All habits, they're all just tools. Lie number two, someone else's routine will work for you. So if, you know, I think like marketing, there's a lot of marketing that thrives on you haven't solved your problem because you haven't done this, right? And I mean, that's what all marketing is, right? So that's not inherently bad. But if someone tells you specifically that you are not doing a habit that they are doing, then probably it's not going to work for you in the way that it works for them. Because context matters a lot. And we underestimate how different our situation is from other people's. So, you know, for example, two people might want to like get in shape, and one of them really hates running, and the other one really hates lifting weights. So one of them runs and one of them lifts weights, and they're going to get in shape in different ways. But like, it depends on what your goals are, right? But if you are, if your life is getting better from a habit, that's great. You know, it does. So what if it's not like the habit that someone else thinks is awesome or that you wish you did really well? At the end of the day, it is not about the habits that you do. It is about making your life better however you can. And a big part of that, I would say, I kind of love this thought, is to get somewhere better, be open to getting anywhere better. Like it doesn't have to be that one place, you know, there's a lot of good betters, a lot of different betters. Any thoughts or like questions about that lie? Like, do you see that? Do you disagree? Does anyone think that someone else's habit would work for you?
I can talk again. I just I do a podcast with my friend and we just had a guest on and she's a personal trainer and things like that. And she was talking about this in essence of like, it's all marketing about like, this is going to fix your problems, but you can't actually sell what it is consistency, which is habits. And I was like, I don't think I've heard it in that sense, but it's 100% true. And I can recognize like when I'm getting advertised to it, like, oh, I should do this because this is going to fix my problems. But even though I hate running, I hate swimming, like I'm not actually going to do it. But it's interesting to think about the marketing side of it.
Yeah, and actually it's great to like, I mean, I call it furniture, you know, but it's like many people think that the answer is expensive, more expensive furniture, like a walking desk, whatever. And it's like, that's fine if that works for you, but it's not, the thing itself is not going to solve the problem. And you know, like I do have a standing desk at home and I think it's great. I stand sometimes I watch TV and I like sort of march in place or something just to like do more exercise. But like the standing desk itself, I found it on the street, first of all. But like, you know, for some people, it doesn't matter. And so it's all about what you will do consistently, right? Like what you said, like you can't sell the consistency part. You have to find the thing that fits your brain and your calendar, your schedule. So love it. I'll take a deep breath. Thanks for offering. Lie number 3. I guess taking deep breath actually is another habit, but I don't track it in particular. Number 3 is that streaks matter. And this kind of goes to that, like being a morally, like a good person if you're like consistent with your habits, you know? And again, it's just very backwards. It's like the habits that you will have good streaks with are the ones that fit. It's not about having a streak for some habit that you just happen to, whatever, try out. However, I will say, oh, and also, sorry, streaks are very fragile. With the bigger the streak, the more likely, like especially if you're doing a habit where you're like after like 100 days or something, which is like a very long streak, right? But even like after that much time, if you're like, oh, I got to keep going because of the streak, that habit is fucked. Like it's not really helping you. You're there for the streak, right? And once it breaks, you're probably going to be done for a while. And that happened to me with meditation. And I didn't realize like that was the issue. It's like once I had a streak of like 3 months, I was like, oh damn, I'm a meditator. I got to keep this identity going. But then when I stopped for years. And really looking back, what I should have done is just started napping sooner, like thinking of different things, right? And just like fitting it into my life instead of being like, I gotta be a meditator, right? And that's another thing, is that the identity piece. Like we want to be a certain person, so we're like, oh, that kind of person, they meditate, and that kind of person, they do this. So I'm like, oh, maybe I could do this. And am I good enough to do that, to be that kind of person, right? But that won't necessarily make your life better. What will make your life better is finding out who you are by testing out different habits and seeing which one fits and makes your life better now, instead of like having to become a different identity. So, however, I will say there is one streak that I think matters above all, which is, can anyone guess? Just think about it for a second. Is there a habit streak or a streak that matters that I think?
Being present.
Being present?
Yep.
Yes. Although the way I would say it is paying attention to your life as it's happening. So paying attention to your life and noticing what's happening. If you're not noticing what's happening, then you can't make decisions to make your life the way you want it. Right. And being present, like for me, it doesn't mean meditating necessarily, right? For me, it actually has a much more specific, it is a specific meaning, and it is self-science, which is a specific way of paying attention, but it doesn't have to be self-science. It's just paying attention. And like, hey, did this work for me? Did this not? And like letting go of what's not working, instead of being like, I'm such a shit. Like, why is this not working for me? Oh, because I'm flawed, right? Paying attention. When you stop paying attention, you basically let other things run your life. You know, you don't decide, you don't make decisions about what to do and what not to do. So, and the thing is, no single habit is really gonna like be the thing that like gets you to rock star status or whatever whatever we want, who the identity that you want to be. No single habit is going to do that. Any one habit can only make your life a little bit better right now or not. So, but you put a few of them together and you're like cruising more, right? And then you have more energy, and then maybe you make more decisions. So it's like an upward spiral rather than like which I for a long time held on to this idea that like I'm going to find my keystone habit or my whatever, and it's not one. Although when you hit one, like napping, like I have with napping, it does change a lot. And you're like, whoa, I can't imagine not doing this now. And for me, napping is it correlates really highly with remembering to love myself, which is one of the things that I've been tracking, is like, do I remember that I love myself? Because I do, and you all do, but sometimes we forget. I think we forget a lot. And so for me, I was tracking that, and I was tracking napping, high correlation to remembering that I love myself. So I think the best habits are really those, the ones that just remind you that you love yourself. And you can't find them if you're not paying attention. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up soon, but yeah, so I'll just sort of summarize again. If you want to create, like there are some habits are better than others. No habit is the God habit or whatever, but except for paying attention. But to create like super habits that really do make a very quick, tangible difference, you want to fit them to your life and identity, not the other way around. Which, like Atomic Habits, this very popular habit book, some of you might have read it. They're like, I mean, it's not wrong, but one of the things is like, think about who you want to be, and then think about what habits that person does. And I think we already do that, and I think that is fine as a starting point, but it leads to a lot of problems when you realize that you're not that person, and the habits that that person does, you are not able to do. And so you're like, well, what, so instead, go back to like, who am I now? What can I tolerate? And what can I find enjoyable in what I'm doing to make my life better now, instead of trying to become something else. And you might think of it as like, we try to cut holes in our life that is the shape of a habit, like meditating or whatever, versus trying to find the spaces in our life that already exist and peacefully placing habits in those spaces. And so that's basically what I have found to be a very big difference in mindset, in energy, and yeah. And so I built this system called Self Science, which is, as I said, it's like an app that's not, you can't find it anywhere because it's inside a Discord group, and it has some AI, and it helps you run experiments on habits. So you test habits for a week, and then it gives you statistics on like, do they correlate with things that you want, and then you evolve.